Welcome to DotConnectAfrica Web Forum. We hosted our 7th series of our virtual web forum on a timely topic of finding long-term solution to curb cybercrimes in the digital sphere, which was in line with the International Cybersecurity Awareness Month theme, Be Cyber Smart. Our session focused on how we can curb cybercrimes in the digital sphere, a global perspective. This event was hosted by Sophia Bekele, founder and group CEO, DotConnectAfrica, and also a cybersecurity, risk and governance expert. We also had a special guest, His Excellency Senator Samuel L. Poghisio, a Kenyan politician, majority leader, former chairman of Kenya Aviation Authority, and a former minister of ICT Ministry who gave his opening address. The event was chaired by Mr. Ram Krishnamani, an associate director at Protiviti, a global consulting firm on risk and compliance in Washington, D.C., USA. And co-chaired by Ms. Elizabeth Kolade, a cybersecurity professional and the director of membership of the Cybersecurity Expert Association of Nigeria. Our panel of speakers discussed, but not limited to, the status of cybersecurity policy, Data Protection Act and the implication of data sovereignty and the cloud, how can ethical hacking improve the security posture of an organization, emerging technologies such as Web 3.0, and how can consumers adopt these technologies for social and economic development. I will hand over to Sophia Bekele, who will take over from here.
Hello everyone. Good morning, afternoon and evening, our esteemed speakers, contributors, friends of Africa who are coming to us live via tech from all parts of the countries of the world. My name is Sophia Bekele and I am the founder and CEO of DotConnectAfrica Group and your host today. I am speaking to you from California, about 5 a.m., a bit past that, my time. Thank you all for making the time to grace us with your presence, to share your views and perspective, and welcome to our virtual web forum. This is DCA's 7th virtual web forum series, sponsored by DCA Digital Academy, which recently in the past months emerged as the winner of the best in digital education in Africa. So our web forum was also recognized as part of such, so congrats to all the team who can put such an event together. Given that it's Friday and the end of the working week, I'm sure you are all looking forward to a restful weekend. Our virtual session today, the topic is finding a long-term solution to curb cybercrime in the digital sphere with the hashtag campaign End Cybercrime. Why DCA chose to hold this conversation is obvious. It's International Cybersecurity Awareness Month, October. And we are glad to have this discussion before the end of the month, and we're very happy we made it. Most of us here today are professionals in our fields, and I'm sure excited about it. More so because the current rapid digital transformation post-pandemic has given this field a sort of boost and attention, and even glamorized it, as we were discussing yesterday with Elizabeth, which is our co-chair. I started out my career nearly 20 years ago in this field as well. Nobody knew about it or even appreciated it as a value add. Our departments were always seen as overhead, used to be part of audit, so it was an expense unit. So we've come a long way. So this year's global campaign theme is See Yourself in Cyber and Be Cyber Smart. It may seem like a complex subject, but ultimately it's really all about people. So this October focused on people part of cybersecurity, providing information and resources to help educate the public and ensure all individuals and organizations make smart decisions, whether on the job, at home, or at school, now and in the future. And to imagine a world that's free of cybercrimes and threats, where everybody stays safe and secure online. That's an uphill task for sure, but we're here to support it. So in order to get this shared global perspective, I thought we'll share a 2-minute video that can set the stage for our discussion. I'll then proceed to introduce our special guest of honor.
Around the world, cybercrime is on the rise. By 2050, smart cities and homes will be the norm. Your fridge will tell a drone to pick up fresh milk when you run out, and lampposts will change the intensity of streetlights when smartphones, and therefore humans, are nearby. In this hyper-connected world, the threat cybercriminals pose will only grow. In the home, smart devices, including voice assistants, vacuum cleaners, and toilets, will be easy pickings for hackers. While these poorly secured gadgets do not store sensitive data themselves, they link to others that do, and are vulnerable access points for criminals. Meanwhile, artificial intelligence is a double-edged sword. While AI systems can help to identify incoming threats, attackers can also use them to unearth vulnerabilities. In future, foreign powers or cybercriminals could cripple a country's electricity network by taking over the AI that controls it. Or they could cut off the water supply, or even cause traffic chaos on the roads. AI could also help identity fraudsters by generating deep fakes. These digital doppelgangers are currently a novelty, but the techniques used to create them are rapidly improving, with increasingly realistic depictions of people. So far, they've mostly been used as part of revenge pornography, but a realistic digital avatar could be a useful cover for wheedling key details, such as passwords or bank details, out of targets. But the struggle to keep systems secure is not hopeless. By 2050, much poorly written and outdated code will be removed and replaced by more secure alternatives. Even passwords could be phased out, obsolete and less secure than facial recognition software. Deepfakes could be beaten by constant verification systems that track eye movement, faces, and keystrokes to ensure the person behind the keyboard is who they claim to be. But that risks putting cybersecurity over privacy. Policymakers and designers must work hard to ensure that this does not become a binary choice.
Well, there you go. Fabulous. That is such a great recap of our global digital transformation and the cybersecurity issues that we're facing. Very, very scary, isn't it? And a lot of work ahead. So as we continue to, go completely digital in so many aspects of our lives, almost all of our data is being hosted on the cloud. So we can't ignore the significance of cloud cybersecurity moving forward. I call it the evil twin. On one hand, cybersecurity companies are fighting for market share as data breaches and ransom attacks become more common, more damaging, and more expensive. On the other, top cloud providers such as Google, Amazon, and Microsoft, which some of you here are working for, are also pushing to expand in the business sector. So with that, I hope today our 1-hour session can be guided by first our special guest, the former Minister for Information Communication of Kenya, Honorable Samuel Poghisio, with whom I've crossed paths during my work in Kenya while His Excellency was in charge, which was a privilege to me. As a senator and member of parliament and other roles he played, his contributions to Kenya are immense. His Excellency has been honored to give us few minutes of his valuable time and an opening remark to share his thoughts and experiences on this topic, including cybersecurity in areas which he has championed during his term. With that, I give you the floor, Excellency.
Well, thank you very much, Sophia, and the panel. Sophia and I have met I think, about 15 years ago, and that's how I realized how dedicated and committed she was to this space in the Africa region. And I want to say thank you, Sophia, for your hard work and for your continued engagement. You and DCA and everybody else involved, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to be part and parcel of this. I know that the time is limited, and so I will not go into details. I want to just give a little information about where I am. That is Kenya. And you all need to know that we just came out of a very, very contested election in Kenya. And part of the contest in this election was that cybercrimes were committed, that the digital format of our results was interfered with, and things like that. That just gives you a very good example of where Kenya is. Kenya has reached the level in the digital space that has gained a reputation. Sophia will remember, of course, when we started. And so sometimes we feel that we are responsible for putting our countries or our organizations or even ourselves in the space that now becomes the subject of cybercrime. And so it's very important for us to discuss this in the context that we are already in that space. We already see the threats. We experience the threats, but we now need to find how to get ourselves out of this threat or to deal with the threat. In Kenya, for example, and I'll just give you this very few, in the 2020 report, some of the cyber crimes that were reported to deal with malware was 124,168. The botnet DDoS was about 4,000. The web application attacks were more than 11,000. That's just 1 year, and the system vulnerability is reported about 115. We have, of course, developed several cybercrime bills and laws, the cybercrime and computer-related crimes. We currently have the Data Protection Act of 2019, and we have the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act of 2018, and many other related laws. We're trying. That means Kenya, as you know, we accelerated Kenya into the digital space during our time. And so Kenya is therefore in a position now to be hit and attacked because we are already depending on so many of these, we are already depending on technology and the cloud computing and other things to deal with our situation. So Sophia, I just wanted to say, I'm in the right place, dealing with the right subjects. Let me also recognize the fact that the panel that we have is in all parts of the world, and therefore you're in different time zones. But let's deal with this matter, as Sophia has pointed out, and I like the clip that you just shared because it summarizes everything. I don't have to go back to those dangers. We are already in that space, and we must therefore, as they say, if you make your bed, you must be prepared to lie in it. So let me just begin by saying thank you, all of you, for bringing this contextualized approach to a very, very sensitive and very real threat of the world today. I'm supposing that there will come a time when it will be commonplace in every country to just discuss cyber crimes. It will be commonplace because as I see crimes are beginning to roll into that cyberspace, and so our legal systems and our universities, our technology training institutions must begin to deal with this matter as a matter of urgency. So I was in the space as a minister, and let just, because of the time that is limited, let me just say what we did as during that time, and that was a long time, and we anticipated because of advice and readings. We did, and so we set up a computer emergency response team during the time as a prerequisite for the consequent establishment of a fully fledged cyber crime combating department that I led of ICT. And during that time, I also called for tougher measures against cybercrime and led in the developing of a legal and regulatory framework on privacy, on e-security, and cybercrime. So, I mean, we are, as a country, and Africa is very fast growing into this space, not only Kenya. And you will all remember that Kenya was the first to get into its country the undersea cables and therefore broadband in great amounts. So let me not dwell on Kenya very much. Since cybercrimes have permeated the entire corner, every corner of the globe, it is comforting to note that you are there discussing this matter at this point. And we would like to share this with our other organizations, and especially in fields in this country. I am grateful that within a short time, we have talked about cloud in cyber crimes and cyber crimes, and that's the pet subject of Sophia and this year. And therefore, it follows that we will therefore be needing an increase in cloud storage because of the amounts that are coming our way. You know, so cloud storage will still have to increase because of these streaming services. As you know now, with the different services, photos and other popular content, all that will need to be protected. And so the increase in the space in this cloud will have to be invested. I'm saying that new technologies like, for example, blockchain. You know, now blockchain. Okay, let's talk about blockchain, chain-based smart contracts, and this we know that they govern our relationship or your relationship with the different cloud providers. Now, if we can manage to therefore deal with this, to implement a cybersecurity on our cloud and the blockchain at the same time, it will be together with a great impact. Will have a great impact on how we can bring controls back to our people to control. We bring direct control to the individual and to the organization. And that's what we need to do, increase the more number of people who can control their own space.
Yeah.
And so that requires a lot of input. We're also going into the area of quantum computing, which is the next big thing. How will we then deal with this world-changing effect on our cloud security? And so it will also affect our current encryption algorithms. So I have spoken about Kenya because I know best what is in Kenya. But I would also like to share with you that as we discuss these things, Sophia and the rest of you, our duty is to keep online space safe for everybody. That is what you are supposed to be discussing today and for the 1 hour. And I don't want to take that much of your time. I want to encourage you to bring in your contextualized manner the discussions to the live subject of finding a long-term solution for cybercrimes. I want to thank you and therefore declare this discussion open. Thank you, Sophia, for inviting me. And I'd like to be grateful. I'll follow how the discussion goes. And I feel like getting back to the space that I used to occupy before. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for that insightful message, Your Excellency. We are grateful to your inspiration and experience. That was a lot of information and definitely food for thought. Thanks for the brief on the status of cybersecurity in Kenya, as well as the technologies you mentioned that we should be aware of in terms of benefit as well as security. And thank you again also for mentioning kudos to me and my commitment to this field. I am committed. Thank you for observing. With that, let me now introduce our chair and co-chair and to unpack these probing questions and take a deep dive into our subject with the able hand of Ram Krishmani, which is our chair based in Washington, D.C., and a co-chair, Elizabeth Kolat from Nigeria. Somehow I find Ram is coming from India. He just told me 2 days ago, perhaps organizing support for Rushni Shunak. I don't know. And Elizabeth is also in UK now, the two most trending countries currently. Ram, our chair, is an associate director at Protivity, a global consulting and risk compliance firm, also a veteran in the industry and has worked for so many reputed firms in strategy and senior management capacities, including Deloitte, Accenture, Cognizant Technology, and Enron Con in India Limited. Surprisingly, he also knows Africa well. He has worked in Kenya, Mombasa, and Djibouti as a CFO. Ages ago, he says. I met Ram at the GRC International Conference in Florida a few months back, and our talk, we were both speakers, and our talk in Africa started there. Maybe he wants to come back, or maybe we want to draw him in. Who knows? Elizabeth, our co-chair, has so many accolades in cybersecurity. At a young age, I think, which shows her commitment to the profession. She was one of the top 50 women in cybersecurity in Africa in 2020. In 2021, was named a global influencer in the IFSEC Global Awards under the Security One to Watch, and the same year nominated for Young CISO of the Year Awards. She's also served as a member of the Presidential Committee, which reviewed and produced Nigeria's National Security Policy and Strategy 2021. Good job, Nigeria. She is currently a director and member of Cybersecurity Experts Association of Nigeria and remains one of the avid advocates for education of women in technology. Very happy to hear that, Elizabeth. DCA welcomes you for that. We are all about women in tech. And her career spans government and private sector and civil society. Elizabeth is a fellow of Young African Leaders Initiative. So with that, let me leave the floor to our chair so as we dive into the subject matter. Thank you so much.
Hey, I don't know whether I should say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. Different time zones. Absolutely brilliant panel. When I was reading through the list of speakers, I was pleasantly stumped that in a very short time, Sophia could actually bring this diverse group together. So, not wanting to use time for me to talk, I would like to listen to what, and I'm just going to go in the order that I'm basically seeing on my screen. So maybe the first question is possibly going to go to Sherifat. And Sherifat pretty much comes with a lot of accolades. I'll leave the accolades. I'll possibly let her to speak about 30 seconds about what she's doing. She's among the top 20 Canadian women from 2022 and in the cybersecurity part. So maybe first let's start with what we call as a developed world or the best world of what we know. So Elizabeth, the question for you is, what literally would you think is the status of cybersecurity policy in Canada? Has it changed over the last 3 years? And how do you think from a country perspective that they've been able to address it for cybersecurity purposes? So over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sophia. Thank you, Ram and Elizabeth. It's my pleasure to be here. Yes, my name is Sherifat, and I currently work in a financial institution here as a cybersecurity specialist, and I live in Canada. And as regards your question, the state of cybersecurity in Canada, I would say it's about the same situation across the world. So cybersecurity, like we learned from the minister, and as we all know, it's a global situation. The fact that the world is digitalized makes it very easy for cybercrime to occur from anywhere in the world. So it's practically the same situation that we are facing in terms of country policies, in terms of what the government, what they're doing to curb cybersecurity menace. There has been policies, there has been laws, there has been acts and bills in particular, and quite commendable is the fact that cybercrime is actually a criminal offense in Canada. In the criminal code, there are certain sections of the code that talk specifically about cybersecurity, cybercrime. I'll talk about hacking. There's a section in the criminal code for Canada that criminalizes hacking, phishing, denial of service, malware attacks, and the likes. All of this has been categorized as a criminal offense. So if you're caught doing this, you are perpetrating, you're hacking a network, you're going after people's information that you shouldn't, you actually can face, the law and go to court and be sentenced to jail for this. And from a government point of view, this has been as far back as years ago, and Canada continues to improve on it. We have laws around privacy and data protection, the PIPEDA, and then there's another law which is being worked on at the CPPA law, which is also being improved just to ensure that data is secured. Businesses and government entities are doing their best to remain, compliant with the law. Thank you.
Hey, Elizabeth, I think you have a few questions that I'm sure you are eager to pose to the panelists.
Yes,
so I'll
yes.
pass it on to you.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Ram, and thank you to all our panelists. So listening to the host and the special guest today, and also Sherifat in what she mentioned, all three speakers had spoken about some data protection acts, speaking to how data has become very valuable now. So I'd like to hear from Joylyn and Kane on what's your thoughts on how digital transformation, particularly cloud adoption, has changed what the security parameters currently are, especially as it relates to privacy and data protection. Also, if you can chip in as to whether your country has adopted the Data Protection Act. Over to you, Joylene, and then we'll hear from Kane.
Thank you, Elizabeth. As for the part where my country has adopted data privacy, His Excellency covered a lot of that. So just to highlight some of the acts that we have the Kenya Information and Communications Act, which was effected in 1999. And so this one is just a law for the information and communications technology industry in Kenya, outlining the requirements and compliance standards which are licensed in the IT service providers within who collect data and who control the data. So data collectors and data controllers as well. So, and we also have the famous Data Protection Act as well, which was effected in 2019. And so in terms of coverage, in terms of data protection, we have a lot of visibility around that. And we are trying more and more to get data protection officers. We have an active committee which advises the Ministry of ICT in terms of matters data protection. So in terms of data protection, we are doing a lot around that. One thing that was affected as well for financial institutions, they all have to have the data protection officers who also work hand in hand with the communications authority and making sure that cybersecurity incidents are also reported for all these big cybersecurity companies. Though, even if we have a lot of adoption in terms of even data protection, we still have very many companies which are not compliant for sure. And we still have some bit of work to do in terms of empowering even small SMBs in terms of ensuring that their businesses are also secure. I think I'll hand over to the next speaker just to cover around data protection for his country.
Thank you very much.
So when I think about data sovereignty and data protection, I go back to where it really came out of. And if you look at the Schrems II decision out of the European Union Court of Justice, that was partially due to Five Eyes technical surveillance capabilities, where it was very easy for national security agencies in multiple countries to be able to potentially inspect and collect the data for European Union subjects. That was just out of the EU Court of Justice decision. And that's influenced a lot of technical decisions, even though that itself is a legal decision. So when I talk to global companies about how to approach this matter, you can't just focus on the technical controls. I know as technologists, often that's very comfortable space for us to operate in. But realistically, companies need to have policy controls as well as technical controls to ensure that the data that they're storing are being stored appropriately. And more often than not, that actually does turn out to be regionally. And that has the additional benefit associated. Like if you have to worry about data sovereignty, if you're storing it regionally, the other bonus you get is that the data are geoproximate to where the data are being consumed or being used. The only challenge for which there's not really a great answer is around privacy matters associated with cross-border or international data analytics or data lakes, where you want to say, okay, well, we're going to store all of our EU data in the EU, we're going to store all of our United States data in the United States, all of our Australia data, Australia, and so forth. If you want to do a whole-up analytics model, the guidance there is to make sure that you're ensuring privacy of those end consumers or end users by the most stringent standard. Trying to do a region by region privacy data approach when doing mass data analytics is it's a good science experiment. Wouldn't recommend it, right? It's go with whatever the hard standard is, and everything else is going to be easy by comparison.
Excellent. Thank you very much. You both have unpacked a whole lot in that very brief answer. I'll now hand over to Ram to continue the session.
Trying to talk. Okay, so I think what we are talking about is pretty much how do we expect the customers who comfortably adopt these technologies, for the social and economic development, but they still seem to be pretty frazzled about securing themselves while using these technologies, and then the techies don't really turn on, in the sense, when you're using these for social and economic development for the technologies part, from a cybersecurity part, what is it that basically you believe they should pay attention to? Something that you can share from your experiences.
What I think that like the end users or customers should pay attention to is there are some basic things that are really basic to notice when you're going to like be hacked or you're being social engineered or something. Usually they are very, very basic notifiers of such situations. But for some reason, our end users are always thinking that we got it all covered. Like there are things that should be like just avoided by their vigilance. And like however good the software or system or application may be well secured, still these things will not, like that security will not be as good or will not be that effective if the end user themselves are not aware of these threats and what they need to look out for to keep themselves secure.
Hey,
so yeah, so like just something basic, something as basic as looking at the link in your browser. If you're like, maybe if you're visiting a site that is known to have HTTPS and it's HTTP and you, the user, you're not concerned, like the browser itself has marked it red in the search bar, but usually they don't care. They just focus on the center screen, the body of the site, and if they see the words they are looking for, they'll put in the information and then press proceed.
Okay, thanks, Abid. Hey,
Ram,
Jolene,
can I weigh in on this one too? Because we're on a global call. Oh, thank you. So just really briefly, I think the thing I get excited about really, and we've got somebody on the call from Singapore, which is what made me think about it. The consumers who are buying Internet of Things devices, IoT, that came up at the top of the video, a lot of those are just hot garbage, right? A lot of IoT devices are literal trash when it comes to a security perspective. And so what I see is the Internet of Things voluntary labeling work being done out of the EU, out of Singapore, and I think even here in the United States, we've now got Energy Star voluntary labeling proposals. That's going to help customers choose a more secure product for their home or for their business. I think that level of simplicity, that elegant design where people can go, do I want to buy the 1-star product or do I want to buy a 3-star product, is going to really help enable consumers to make better decisions and to feel a little less anxious about putting security cameras or other smart speakers or other devices in their homes.
Thanks, Ken. Hey, Jolene, you had something to contribute?
Yes, definitely. So I come from an offensive security background where I try and break these systems and reveal security vulnerabilities, and currently working in the cloud provider space, currently in Microsoft, working on Azure. So from an ethical hacker perspective, one thing that I would advise everyone is to have a security first mindset. So it's everyone training, all the staff. You have a security policy in place where everyone should comply to the security policy, and you should also change it up like every so often to make sure that it's up to date. And by having a security first mindset, it's that you're telling everyone that they have a responsibility in securing your organization's assets. So I'll give an example now. If it's around for IoT that Kane was mentioning, they also have to do their due diligence. Are those IoT devices actually secure? What gateway or endpoint that's actually public facing, is it secure? Do you have data that's actually on transit insecure? You're looking at data at rest, data in transit, data in use. You have to do a lot of due diligence around that. And this is where we also talk about stuff around DevSecOps. So I believe it's important just to mention, like, just to have DevSecOps evolution within your organization. So development organizations try to approach and introducing a security first mindset culture and automating security into every phase of the software development lifecycle, all the way from design to delivery. So the reason I'm mentioning that this is because we have to make sure that we are incorporating security all the way from design before it actually reaches production. So because we've seen it's actually 60 times more costly to fix a security defect once it's in production versus when you're in development. And we've seen that 62% of enterprises do not actually integrate security in their development phases. So we still have a long way to go. And that is why we need input in order to curb this security, cyber warfare or cybercrime. We have to do our bit as well. So DevSecOps is what we call shifting security left, but you also find that hackers are also shifting security left. So it's a cyber warfare, and we have a lot to do in curbing this.
May I?
Yeah,
May I chime in on this as well?
Oh, okay.
Sorry, if there's still time.
You're mute, Ram. You're mute. We can hear you, Ram.
I said please do. Salah, I think good inputs.
Oh, thank you. So I'm originally Kenyan, but I've had the opportunity to live and work in Southeast Asia for almost a decade now. And it's given me a unique opportunity to juxtapose Kenya and Malaysia in terms of cybersecurity maturity, both in the industry and in government. And an interesting observation I noted in East Africa and in many parts of Malaysia is that many people are aware of what cybersecurity is, and many people are terrified. They know that their business is at risk, their incomes are at risk. Ransomware is a buzzword at the water cooler. And there is a bridge between teaching entire populations to think in a security mindset and, awareness. So in Kenya, we are still, I'll use Malaysia as an example. When the national cybersecurity policy was implemented in 2006, one of the big initiatives was investing in centralizing bodies of knowledge and service, technical, in terms of facilitating knowledge exchange between the public and private sector. Before this, many businesses were just coming into the digital age and they were unaware of what steps they can take. And before we get to a granular level where we can guide them on a really technical level, first, there has to be some stepping stones along the way. And this is where governments play a big part in investing in these resources. So in 2020, Malaysia invested in it's basically a rejuvenation of the initial policy, which is called the Malaysia Cybersecurity Strategy. A new body, a new agency was established. A budget of over $400 million was put into it with a focus of increasing the reach of the government to the private sector, to the SMEs who may or may not be able to afford expensive auditing services that will guide them through compliance and security awareness. And this strategy also focused on not just cyber defense, which was the traditional way of looking at it, but also on resilience. Now businesses are being educated on the scenario where you are breached, not what if you're breached. What do you do when you are? Where are the computer emergency response team situated? How do you get in touch? How do you report cyber threats? And then laws are implemented now in line with these strategies, where now businesses must report breaches within 72 hours. This is a new initiative, a new law that may or may not be rolled out this year in Malaysia. So yeah, I see it as a stepping stones thing, but I hope my response made sense.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks, Ella. In fact, before I go to Elizabeth, I have something which came up when I was going through one of the interviews that Sophia, you had given to the CIO Africa. And I think at that point in time, there was a question pretty much on a debate on cybersecurity, and you were pretty critical about that. Do you think it still holds valid, or has your views changed?
Thanks for asking, Ram. I don't think my views changed. Probably this group can also inform us, and based on what everybody is doing and the issue of data sovereignty for each country. So I think at that time, 2015, I think, the African Union has come up with a declaration that had said that all countries are going to be sort of governed by a framework that is declared by, you know, the cybersecurity framework as it's declared by African Union. And my issue was African governments were a sovereign governments, and they should be having their own cybersecurity models as per the data sovereignty they were implementing. I was suggesting we have to have comments by all, and it's not just a top-down approach by African Union to say this to governments. And I think at that time, African governments were not even ready with individual cybersecurity or understand the entire process very well. So that was my issue. And well, this panel has addressed their countries. That's why it was a global perspective. And I think also even within the African countries, can we say that, for example, between Nigeria and Kenya, do we have the same declarations, or I mean, do we have the same policies and government policies? Do we share, I mean, or did we adapt directly what the African Union told us at that time? If anybody has that information. I doubt, but sometimes these paperwork just get pushed by, you know, by bureaucrats, and then it goes stale, or it was just done for that time. But at least I had to make my comment at that time. That's all.
Thanks, Sophia.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, I think over to you. I think you had a couple of
so
questions.
if I can quickly respond to Sophia's comments and some of the questions that she did raise. I think we actually, in Africa, we have a number of cybersecurity frameworks and documents that cuts across, but we have a problem of different countries adopting or ratifying. For example, we have the Malabo Convention, but how many countries in Africa have ratified the Malabo Convention? And when you go into the nitty-gritty, sometimes it's because some of the initiatives that are present are somewhat unrealistic, right? Because when they were being put together, those, like you mentioned, do not exactly understand the technicalities. So we haven't exactly put in place what are the realities of implementation, what are the peculiarities. And sometimes when it comes to implementation, we have to factor in the different peculiarities and see how it fits. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. That's a whole conversation on its own. But continuing on this panel, the last question tried to talk about responsibility of users. I would now like to go to organizational perspective now, and considering the need for organizations to have strong cyber defense mechanisms now. I'd like to come to a common subject that is being spoken about, which is the subject of ethical hacking. And my question is, how can ethical hacking help organizations to improve the security posture of their organization? And at what points do organizations call for ethical hacking? And to answer this question, I'd like to hear from Joylene for the offensive. I'm glad you mentioned you come from the offensive perspective. I'd like to hear from Salah. I'd also like to hear from David as an ethical hacker, if your microphone is working well now. And I would like to hear from Sherifat, coming from the CISO angle as a top decision maker. What do you think about ethical hacking? Sometimes it's a very controversial conversation that comes up. How can organizations use this to improve their security posture, and at what points do we call for ethical hacking? Over to you, Joylene, and then Salah, David, and Sherifat. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So on this topic, so you'll find that you have security professionals who are working within your organization. So maybe security assurance. So these guys are also ethical hackers. So you would involve the security assurance officers all the way from when that project is being thought of, from design phase as well. So you're able to do a lot of threat modeling, trying to identify threat vectors that can be used to compromise your system that you're actually going to design. So it's very important to involve them in each and every stage of your software development, or if it's deploying an already existing system within your environment, it's important to involve them throughout. And also, once the system is already in production, I encourage all of us to have a bug bounty program, whereby at least you have several ethical hackers as well who are onboarded in your bug bounty program. It can be private bug bounty program or public ones through platforms like HackerOne or BugCrowd, or there are several others that are available. So where at least you're able to invite several other ethical hackers to give vulnerabilities from your systems, and you're able to pay them in return.
Thank you. Now over to you, Salah. What are your thoughts on the concept of ethical hacking, and how, where should organizations bring it?
Thank you. Well, I believe ethical hacking is a really important part of the cybersecurity process, in that, coming from an infrastructural perspective, your internal tech landscape is evolving like literally by the week. And with each change, with each migration, be it to the cloud, be it a hybrid setup, be it to different premises somewhere in the world, you find that you have introduced potential new attack vectors that were not there before. Your technology, however, as it stands, is maybe primed to detect the use cases that you can think of. However, a hacker thinks very differently from, most conventional technology workers. And so it's good to see things from their perspective once in a while. It's good to be able to scope out first your attack surface from the outside and put it to the test. See how far someone can get through your defenses. This can be done annually. This can be done as frequently as the business needs, but it's, to me, one of the most important things about security today. Thank you.
And absolutely, I agree with Salah and Joylene. Ethical hacking, if you go one step back, we know there is the black hackers, there's the white hackers, also called the ethical hackers, and then the gray in between. So I like both perspectives that have been shared. Looking at it from a business point of view, should I say the defensive point of view, not the offensive side, like Joylene. It's interesting that our views are actually very similar. So you test all the way throughout the software development lifecycle, right from the beginning, as the programs are being written, the application code are being written, you do code reviews, you review your codes to make sure any loopholes are not in the codes. Your software developers are writing code securely. You're doing unit testing, you're doing fuzzy logic testing, you're doing vulnerability testing. And eventually, when your system is in production, you're also doing ethical hacking. I really want to emphasize the importance of having a threat hunting program like that Joylene talked about. This is you're opening up your system to people who are willing to poke it and bring out vulnerabilities, and then you can pay for them. That way, you can use that program to be a little one step ahead of the bad guys, because we have the black hackers who want to hack the system and then use this information in the dark web, in the dark net, and share all of this information. But if you can give a little bit of opportunity to those people who are gray wants to be black or white, they don't really know where they want to be. But if you introduce a bug hunting program, you can help them decide that, okay, I don't have to be bad. I can also do this hacking and then get rewarded for it. I think organizations should really make use of that. Organizations as well as governments. We heard the minister when he talked about the Kenya elections. Nigeria election is coming up in 2023. It's a lot of focus on cybercrime as well. There's a lot of stories we are hearing about cyber attacks are going to come in and things like that. This is one way to get ethical hackers to try and poke the system so that all of these vulnerabilities can be picked ahead before they're exploited by the black guys. Thank you.
Hey,
Thank
we're
you.
just coming up on the top of the hour. Want to be respectful of time. I know, Habib, you had something to go, and then I'll leave it back to Sophia to come up with the concluding ones.
Yeah, I wanted to use the perspective of my country. I actually come from the same country as Engineer David. And yeah, so starting out in my career, I'm a software engineer myself. But starting out, I used to work at the Bank of Uganda, which is our central bank here in Uganda. And whenever it came to cybersecurity, it was, yes, everyone held it as a very sensitive topic. But when it came to ethical hacking, like whenever you suggested that, what if we actually put these systems to the test? No one wanted to hear that. Like you were never allowed to talk about testing systems, because like I was on the business automation team, and we had to develop systems. But whenever we actually developed anything, it would just be covered under shades, like used as a benchmark, and then a weird budget is passed, and a system that is less functional is bought from abroad, something like that. And then whenever you said, why don't we test this thing? Why don't we check for this or that? But since someone brought this specifically in terms of budget, like they wanted to get a certain information or cut, so they don't want you to do that, because you might expose that whatever they brought on the table isn't worth it. Then lastly, the other part is a lot of organizations actually focus on the budget and time. I've worked with several like organizations and engineers, but most of the times employers will prefer someone who can do the thing quick, not someone who can do the thing well. So when you try to make them look at, okay, there's the standards, you have to follow this or that, they won't listen. They want someone who will do it in one day. That is what they hear. Then you find that someone's submission, they've put environment variables on the public repo. You understand? So which causes security, like security threats from the grassroots. Before even the hackers are interested in hacking you, you're like dumping your security in the trash yourself.
Yeah, thank you very much, Habib. I would now hand over to Ram.
So does anyone have any concluding remarks to add on the beautiful conversation of inputs that has been coming in from different countries, different perspectives, legislation?
Yeah, I'll be brief so we can give them for others. I wanted to talk about we as a people, what can we do? And it is not as simple. I tweet about it, I talk about it. I suspect that the next world war is probably going to come from a rumor on the internet. Someone is going to give out a fake video, a fake photo from deep fakes, and they're going to cause a lot of confusion. We can already see the amount of havoc that is doing to our community. Someone comes up with a content and then shares it to multiple people, and people run with it. So as everybody, please, I'll try to encourage us to adopt a zero trust approach to online content. Please verify whatever you find online before you act on it. These are crucial times coming. There's a lot of temper. We can see what is happening all from Ukraine and Russia up onto Nigeria elections coming and other African countries, all the whole world. Please, let's play our part by verifying. WhatsApp has been a tool for sharing information, but whenever you receive such information, please have a zero trust approach to it. Thank you.
Ken, you want to go next?
Thank you. So I recognize it's Friday and I'm about to give everybody a challenge. So this is kind of what I do. Because here's the thing, calls like this, these are great. These are great and these are necessary. And us talking as cyber professionals about cybersecurity doesn't solve the hiring gap. We have a global hiring gap. And the reason that we have a global hiring gap, and the challenge I'm going to give to everyone on this call, go out to your schools. Go out to high schools, go out to middle schools, talk to your kids, talk to your school board. And I say that because if you think about a job like ethical hacking, how many middle school students, and I have had this talk with middle school students, it is a privilege to speak to those audiences. It's also a real challenge. You want to know how good you are as a speaker? Go talk to a middle school. But how many of them know that they could be paid to break into businesses for a living? that that could be their future career. They don't. And the reason that we have this continued social problem associated with a hiring gap, if we as professionals are not visible in our communities, students will continue to choose other careers. And that has deleterious effects on society as well, because even if you go to a school, you give a talk on cybersecurity, and please do that, they might have not heard of the topic before. They might not have heard of the idea of multi-factor authentication before. They might not decide, hey, I'm going to go do the cybers for a living, but at least they're aware of the topic, and that will help them become better prepared to defend their family and to protect their friends and their community. And if they become a corporate employee or if they work for a public sector entity, at least they have the concepts. So please, this year and next, get out in the community. Please engage the younger generation so that we don't have this conversation again in 20 years' time.
That's nice.
Yeah. I love the points that everyone has shared. First of all, it's really engaging, and I have a lot to look into beyond this call. But I wanted to highlight one of the threats that I see, especially in emerging economies where digital and tech adoption is as monumental as it is in Kenya, for example. And it's actually linked to what Mr. Kane said. There is a labor shortage, but there is also a surplus in skill available right now in emerging economies. And a lot of this skill is not being absorbed or being harnessed fast enough. And in times of economic uncertainty, if platforms are not created to allow them to apply their skills in a more productive way, then we will see an increase of cyber attacks in whatever region we look at. So as much as it's incredibly important that we raise awareness and we pull them into the sector, but we must also give them the avenues to actually be able to get in. We have to try and make entry-level jobs more accessible. And I think this may have a direct impact on the frequency of cyber attacks, but that's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Absolutely. Jillian, you had something?
Yes. So one thing with supplying the talent for cybersecurity. So we're still seeing like what's being delivered in the university or the curriculum is actually still off. Like if you compare what's needed in the job market and what's being taught in the school, there's still a lot that needs to be done in the school curriculum in terms of aligning the cybersecurity requirements and with the job market. And also, I really like what Kane said in terms of all of us having vacancies as well for cybersecurity professionals or even beginners. Because yes, we are pushing and talking to very many communities, cybersecurity communities, and they're learning. And we're still seeing that, yes, so what happens after they learn? Will they be placed somewhere? So that's a huge challenge because I have done that myself. Like here in Africa, taught very many students on like security, even Azure security, but they're very limited slots as well. So it's all up to us to have these openings and to also mentor as many people as possible in cybersecurity. And one last thing is to remind everyone that security is everyone's responsibility. So you might say that my data is irrelevant, like nothing will happen if I release this data. But what happens is I can be able to gather all that data that you're saying is nothing, and accumulate for a huge scope of people and use that data against the particular ecosystem. So like your data matters. So don't give your data for free to hackers out there. So security is everyone's responsibility.
Elizabeth, do you have any last words before we go back?
Yes, so I'll be wearing 2 caps. I would read David's thoughts and then I would go to my own final thoughts. So in his contribution to the question on ethical hacking, he says that systems must be tested from the onset of the development. Security has to be intertwined with all the development iterations, from penetration testing, ethical hacking, and other security validations have to be done prior to development. Now, he references in his country, Uganda, there is not so much emphasis on overall software and system security, and this often leads to development and deployment of suboptimal systems. To his concluding remarks, David says that the discussion has opened our eyes, and he calls for the need for us to include cybersecurity as a core in our education and software development disciplines. I'd like to piggyback on that and also on what Joylene, Sherifat, and Kane had mentioned. In line with the theme for this year's Global Cybersecurity Month campaign, which is See Yourself in Cyber, something very interesting that Kane had mentioned is for us to be able to help the young ones to build up skills and develop cybersecurity skills. And I think this is very important because as we teach them about cybersecurity, we also need to be able to teach them about what the positive side is. Sometimes when we teach cybersecurity, we teach with some level of fear, some sense of fear. And as Ken has mentioned, we need to be able to help these young ones to see there are actually opportunities when you responsibly identify vulnerabilities for organizations. This is one way that we can help to build skills. And also, as Joylene has mentioned, we need to create more entry points for people to come into the cybersecurity industry. This is actually becoming a challenge. I think there is a level of awareness on the global cybersecurity workforce shortage. And what we need to do now is to create more entry points so that more people can come into the cybersecurity space and domain. And one of the ways I think especially in Africa, that's what I can speak for. We have quite a number of initiatives and quite a number of mentorship initiatives that actually help to build people's capacity in this area. And I think this is very important. And finally, to a conversation that I would have really loved us to explore today that we didn't get to was on emerging tech and security around that area. I would just like to wrap up by saying that I think we need to have more conversations on security around emerging tech. Because yes, there's a lot of skepticism that comes around that, but there are also quite a number of opportunities that exist. And we need to have more of these conversations and see how we can tap into the opportunities that exist around security for emerging technology. Thank you very much.
Over to you, Sophia.
All right, Ram, thank you for transferring the closing comments to me. Wow. What a conversation we had. This is just the start. So much more to go. We had so little time to cover such a vast industry and area of concerns and risks to talk about. We have to do this again soon. I want to thank all the wonderful speakers who joined the call to our forum and shared their experience on finding long-term solutions to curb cybercrime in the digital sphere, which was DC's topic. We have heard amazing keynotes, experiences, opinions, and shared views on the future of cybersecurity, data sovereignty, government readiness, and security implications. Blockchain and cloud was covered by our His Excellency. Metaverse, deepfake, which we heard on the video. Wow, I've learned so much from everyone. The zero trust approach by Sherifat was very interesting and was on point. Engaging the middle school on ethical hacking, Kane, that was very original, and also being mindful of emerging technologies, Salah mentioned a bit. And security is everyone's responsibility, says Jolene, and we agree completely. David talks about ethical hacking and cybersecurity should start at the time of software development, indeed. So all these were insightful. What a great discussion. It means a lot, by the way, to our forum organizers and myself that you took the time from your busy schedules to have this executive roundtable discussion, more so during this very busy month of Cybersecurity Awareness Month. I close this event by thanking you all for your participation and for sharing your ideas, opportunities to help the world be cyber smart and see ourselves in cyber. Ciao for now.
We have come to the end of our 7th series of our web forum on a timely topic on finding long-term solution to curb cybercrimes in the digital sphere, which was in line with the International Cybersecurity Awareness Month theme, Be Cyber Smart. Recording is available on our web forum website at www.webforum.dotconnectafrica.org. We thank our DCA Digital Academy and our partners for their support. Like, share, comment, and keep connected.